Tonight on Life the Battlefield, we step into a world most people will never see. A world where the nearest backup is not minutes away, it is hours away. Imagine putting a police uniform knowing that if things go wrong, help may take 3 hours to arrive. For decades, my guests live that reality. Mark Tregellas served nearly 30 years with Victoria Police, protecting remote communities where the rules of policing are very different. Out there, you are not just a police officer. You are the investigator. You are the negotiator. And most importantly, you are the first responder. And sometimes, the only line between the life and death. During his career, Mark survived incidents that would end most careers. He was shot in the face, suffered devastating injuries, and witnessed the darkest moments of human behavior. That being said, he also saw courage, resilience, and the extraordinary strength of communities that rely on the men and women who wear the badge. Today, he shares those experiences in his powerful book, Backup is 3 Hours Away. And tonight, exclusively for Life the Battlefield, we are going to talk about something deeper than policing. We'll talk about courage under fire, trauma behind the badge, and what really means to serve and protect when nobody is coming to help you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life the Battlefield. And please welcome Mark Tregellas. Hello, all of you risk takers and truth seekers. And today we are in a Lanson Place, Parliament Gardens in Melbourne. The place where I do interview when I'm in this amazing city. But today I don't have any guest. It's a Mark Tregellas, the guy who been shot in the head, conscious with a bullet between his eyes. Mark, welcome to the beautiful studio in a hotel room. But thank you for finding time to be today with me.
Fantastic.
Mark, look, I can't emphasize enough how thankful I am that I'm talking to the true hero. In my eyes, you are a true hero because those guys, I spent time in military, time in diplomatic intelligence. I've been surrounded with everything and anything. But true heroes come in shape and size of form as a Mark. So let's go dig deep into his story. And let's go hear what it look like life in police. Not patrolling, not eating sandwich or donuts or coffee or arresting somebody, but what's to look like life on a front line. So Mark, when somebody hears the phrase backup is 3 hours away, I know it's a metaphor, but for you, it was reality. Can you just explain to the audience of Life the Battlefield what that actually means? Backup is 3 hours away.
So that means that for a lot of the majority of my time as a police officer, I was in remote country areas. One of several stations, but one of them was Mallacoota. Mallacoota in Victoria is the most remote country town between Townsville in Queensland and the Eyre Peninsula in South Australia when it comes to a combination of services. For example, it's 24-hour petrol is an hour away, our nearest hospital is 90 minutes away. And so as a result of that, my nearest police station was an hour. That is if someone was working that day. But there were several times when I had jobs where I requested additional police to help me and was told that the nearest police officer was 3 hours from me. Because I'm on the border with New South Wales, you also become a policeman in New South Wales. You have a thing called special constable status.
Okay.
Now that means that I can pursue someone across a state border with a chase in a police car.
Yeah.
I just come under their
Jurisdiction.
pursuit controllers.
Okay.
But the problem is, once I do that, I can't bring them back over the border because technically it's an extradition, but I will just process them at the nearest police station in New South Wales with the help of New South Wales Police. So sometimes it was New South Wales that would have to come and actually help me, but 3 hours is an area. I've taken jobs where I had to drive at speed 2.5 hours to get to them. It's that remote.
Let me be clear now. It's a very simple question. Have you been in position in your life, any moment, when you realize nobody is coming to help me? It's 3 hours away, any patrol car, any assistance?
Oh, many times. One where I was I was trying to not arrest, but I was trying to take a man who'd had a psychotic episode. And he was huge. He was 150 kilo. He'd gone off his meds. He was attempting suicide, and eventually what happened was I wound up, he wound up covering him and me in petrol. He had me in one arm and a 20-litre jerry can of petrol in the other. We were a pace away from a lit campfire, and he was trying to pull me into the campfire with him. And that's probably the one that sticks in my mind the most as being the most dangerous. And if I were to get on the radio and call someone, I was the only one on in Malakuta, so it was an hour away. I do have to say that if things are that bad, where it's lives on the line, then the operators will probably call one of the other police officers who are stationed in the town but are not on, and will bring them in. And on this occasion, that's what happened.
Okay.
But it was still half an hour before, because you don't know if the person's going to be home. So they call in another police officer. He then has to drive to the police station. He has to get into his uniform. He has to go to the safe. He has to sign out a firearm. We don't take our firearms home unless we're on call. So all that takes time to turn off the alarms, to get radios and find out what you're doing. So it was still half an hour before they actually got to me. By that stage, I'd managed to get control of the situation. Yeah.
Mark, you're 6'7". 6'7".
2 meters and 2 centimeters.
Guys are looking like a midget next to Mark. But so your height is quite intimidating, but yet criminals will try to take you down.
They do. It's
a challenge more. It's like a challenge type thing.
Sometimes they come in and they want to have they want to have a fight. Being my height and being my size, also in the town where the locals know me, in every town I worked, I opened martial arts clubs.
Okay.
And I've done martial arts ever since I was 14 years old, and taught for 30 years. So most of the locals knew that. It's funny when you start, they come in to just have a bit of a look and see what it's like, and then suddenly realise that perhaps 30 years of training means that yes, you do know what you're doing. And that translates into, I can remember a few times walking into the pub where someone wants to have a go, and then a local will walk over and go, no, don't.
Don't do it.
So don't do it, which I'm happy with.
I had one very uncomfortable question. The question is, you've gone through so much as many police officers, yet our Australian society barely heard about, not just about you, but the many unsung heroes in a blue uniform. My question is very simple, if you can answer, of course, you know what I mean? I want to know this as a human being, right? Because we love to watch CSI shows. We love to watch, the cops, solve the crimes, everything else. But reality is it's a boot on the ground, which you try to say that's military term, of course. But it's people like yourself, people who are among community, people who deal with the criminals, perpetrators, being shot, stabbed, attacked, spit, whatever you want to name. Why the society doesn't know more about people in a blue uniform?
Australians as a whole have an interesting relationship with bravery and brave acts.
Okay.
We have medals that we give to people who have done extremely brave things, but in Australia we have the tall poppy syndrome, which is where if somebody tries to state that, I did this and it's fantastic and I'm really good, the minute that happens, then everybody tends to downplay it. So a lot of people will do oh no, I just did what anyone else would do, when in fact that's not the case. A lot of people just don't do that. Today when you see video footage of people who are being violent and someone who jumps in to help them, what is everybody else doing? They're filming it. They've gone from being participants to spectators, and they think that by filming it that will be good, and they don't want to get involved. This in part is due to what they call the Giannese effect.
Okay, I know.
And this happened in New York in the 60s, I think it was, where a woman was murdered, and for over half an hour multiple people heard her but didn't do anything about it. And psychologically they say that this is due to people thinking that somebody else will do something about it, and not wanting to be involved or doing it. So that is kind of the reason, but Australia's different. There's still some incredible people that get out there. An excellent example of this was the man who tackled the gunman at the Bondi.
Ah, yes, that is great.
That was an absolute gutsy effort that really, really demands recognition for what he did. It was fantastic to grab a gunman when you're not armed.
Yeah.
is beyond brave. It really
that's
is.
Great, yeah.
In Australia, we have a term. If you want to put yourself out too much, we have a term called fig jam.
Fig jam. I never heard. Okay, I'm still learning after 27 years. I'm still learning. Okay.
Fig jam is an acronym, FIGJAM, and it stands for "Fuck, I'm good. Just ask me."
I like it, man. This is okay, guys. You learned something new today as well. It's very educational. But I just want to say something on my own behalf and everybody who's watching live the Battlefield right now, right here. If it's not people like yourself and people who are police officers, world will look different. And I want to say thank you for in your career you help so many people. I say it's easy to talk about negative things, but your presence obviously encourages other people to be better person, to do more, feel protected, feel valued because of the people like yourself. So I want to say thank you and every police officer, which leads me now to different, I was reading your book, guys. I'm gonna say again, backup is 3 hours away. On chapter 5, spinal surgery, right? And I want to talk about something because I'm very curious, and I saw metamorphosis of police in last 20 years in Australia. From police officers in shirts, the hats, hard hats, what I call them, right? Not these baseball hats, right? And the nice trousers to now have the cargo pants, the different t-shirts and the baseball hats. But I noticed something else. Somebody who's an ex-military, we did have the bullet vests, the combat vests and bulletproof vests, but we wear them only on a training or in a combat. Even in a combat, you'll take it off. In your chapter 5, I'll cite this. Police car weren't made for someone over 2 meters tall. Patrolling for over 8 hours means sitting in position that physiotherapists rage against. Additionally, you can carry over 10 kilos equipment around your waist. Arriving at work, you put a bullet-resistant vest, which I didn't know it's a bullet-resistant vest, and the belt contained a revolver, later my career pistol, as well as 2 spare ammunition pouches, handcuffs, portable radio, blah, 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 blah. So that's a 10-kilo vest. For the shift of 8 hours, and now it's going even more, 12-hour shifts, right? Explain to everybody what police officer goes through when you put that vest and the what was it called, the belt.
So when my career spans over 31 years.
Yes.
So that means that there have been a lot of changes since there, and issues with backs were really at the forefront of command, because a lot of people were going off and with back problems due to the weight that they were carrying. So they wound up going with weight-bearing vests. And these vests integrated a bulletproof, well, not bulletproof, but bullet-resistant vest that was able to do. So that works well. I found with seats, of course, being 6'7", really hard, I would try and counter that by just taking in a lumbar pad to be able to seat correctly. But it's not easy. Fortunately, in the city, you're in sedans and divisional vans, but in the country, you're in four-wheel drives, and the four-wheel drives are a little bit bigger.
So you consider yourself lucky?
I very much considered myself
lucky. That's a lot
lucky,
of comfort for you.
because we were able to. The four-wheel drives were a lot more comfortable to be able to be used, and I've got to admit, even though we probably weren't meant to, I can remember times when you might even take off your vest and then drive in the car, and then if you pull over a vehicle or you get a job, then you will pull over, put your vest on and go to that job.
Are you trained, any police officer trained for that, to carry that much equipment for 12 hours? What's the feeling when you are after shift, you take that vest off? What we don't see, what police officers feel during 12-hour shift. Let's go generally speaking.
Well, it was 12-hour shifts. We went from 8 hours to 12 hours to 10 hours to mix of different shifts. And it was interesting. We felt that after having that amount of stuff, for example, when you went back into the office, and for a meal break or for a cup of coffee or to talk to the sergeant about a job that you may have had, you would just take everything off. And that actually worked really well. So the only thing that you would probably keep on you is your firearm. And then you would just be able to unzip, unsnap, take it off and sit down. So it's not like it was on. I admit there have been times when you have had to wear it for that 12-hour period. And I remember once I had to guard a burn victim who was under arrest in the burns unit in a hospital, and you had to basically stay with him in there. He was badly burned, and what I didn't know until I arrived was that because you don't have, if your skin's burnt off, you can't regulate your temperature. So the temperature inside the room was about 35 degrees centigrade. And I can remember at the end of that, I must have lost 5 kilos in weight from sweating, I tell you, because it was just
terrible.
So hot in there, and you're wearing like a thick vest. And I can just remember drinking absolute litres when I was in there and having to go out and just take a break because the sweat was just pouring off me. But that, I can only ever remember doing that once. But it was an experience.
Can you take us back now, Mark? Because what I like about you, when I was being introduced to you, I was being told he's ex-military. I said, oh, okay. It's a common language, and you started your career in military.
That's right. When I turned 19, I left home and I travelled. The reason was that I took a job at 18 as a tree surgeon.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go on to university. I wanted to be outdoors. I wanted to be active, and tree surgery basically did that for me. But a guy came to work for the company I was with, who had travelled, and he was talking to me about what it was like, and I just got bit by the travel bug. I went, this sounds incredible. So I saved every cent I had. I'm the only 18-year-old I know who never went to a pub. I just stayed home, saved every cent I could, and then at 19 years old said, bye mum, bye dad, see you later, and started travelling. And I wound up travelling to over 50 countries in 4 years. And it was in lieu of a degree.
Okay.
But I wouldn't change any of it, because the experiences that I had, the things I got up to, the adventures I had were fantastic. When I came home, I'd done all these things, and you would go to your friends and they'd go, oh, Trick, have you been away? And I go, yeah, 4 years. And they go, oh, want to go to the pub tonight? And I'm like, how do you even start to relate to them what it was like those 4 years? So I was looking for something that would be as adventurous, and the military came close to my mind, and especially Special Forces, because it gave you the opportunity to do parachuting, small craft handling, airborne rope and rappelling, climbing, diving, that type of thing. I went
Activities that most people avoid.
I went to a recruiter, and he gave me the best advice I could think of. He says, if you really want to look at a career in Special Forces, join the Commando Regiment. Because back in the early 80s, commandos were a backdoor entry to the Special Air Service.
Okay.
If you did a few years in commandos, and the officer, who was SAS, the commanding officer was normally SAS, he would, if he signed off on you, then you could get direct entry. You went over, you did the entry course, and you were in. You didn't have to join the regular army first and then transfer across. So for 4 years I stayed with commandos, and I got to admit it was the fittest I'd ever been. It was some of the hardest things I think I'd ever done, and I was not the fastest or the strongest. I wasn't even the tallest. There were a couple of guys there who were taller than me, and I had convinced myself that if I could just put up with all the crap that I felt we were doing in training, then once I got in, it would get easier. I was wrong. It did not get easier. I just got used to it. So I soon found out that even though physical fitness was something you could work on, the mental attitude was what got you through. When you feel you're at a position where you can't go any further, you're probably only at about 20% of what you're actually capable of, and it's your mental thoughts and processes that did that. It's interesting now that I'm out, but I'm still a member of the association, and I know a lot of the guys who are in now, and I know a lot of the guys who are in the 60s. And what's interesting is that we all have the same type of mindset. All of us think very similarly. And
I can see a smile on your face. You're a very proud man.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously they were after that specific type of person who was who they were wanting. And it's very interesting. It didn't matter if it was SAS is the same, even though they're full-time guys. A lot of them, when you meet them, you're able to...
it's privilege, Mark, actually to talk to you. Like, when we discussed it, we're going to meet for this interview, and our mutual friend, when I saw the book, you sent me, so thank you very much again. I said I was reading, and I said to myself, I'll never believe that police goes through so much, but somebody has a different background, because most of police officers' entrance is directly from civilian life to become police officer, while you choose it, from the different aspect of the life, which is a military. It's totally different. People think the military it's easy, and it's something everybody can do it. It requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot of training, a lot of resilience, and because military it's deployed different than police. And that's my next question. You finish your career military, but you go in police. However, you're not any police. You're the rural police. Now, I'll say as an amateur, please correct me. When you're city cop, you finish your job, you go home, right? You may or may not see the perpetrators, criminals, whatever you do, right? City is big. Let's go say Melbourne. But you work in community. You're the first responder, first line of defense, liaison officer, first aider, maybe somebody father, maybe somebody, help, whatever it is. What's the difference between being the city cop and being in a rural area with the 3 hours backup away?
There's a huge difference. When you're choosing a career in the city, there's still camaraderie. Most 24-hour police stations will have a gym at the back. They'll have a social club, and after night shift, the night shift crew may go out for drinks at the end of it. But I found that whole going to the pub, a lot of police back then smoked. A lot of them were heavy drinkers. I wasn't either of those. And I loved remoteness. I loved the bush. Some of my favourite memories of travel were in the high Himalayas, in the Amazon, in very remote parts of southern Sudan in Africa. And I loved it. I loved the feeling of having to rely on no one but yourself, and that if something happens, then there's no one coming to help you. You are responsible for yourself, so don't fuck up. And try but I love that. I felt alive when I was doing that. So that was one of my main reasons for going to the country when I was there. I didn't know what it would be like. The first station I went to was Portland, which was a 24-hour station. They had both the TMU, TOG back there, the pursuit cars, and they had detectives there. But I started on night shift, and my first job on night shift was to put the crayfish pot out to catch breakfast. And I wondered what I...
You don't like it. You don't like it. You're like... You make it so easy, like to converse with you. But I know you're presenting vast majority of police officers who's going through these ordeals, Some of them going to be in the city, some of them are going to be in a rural area. But my question about being police officer in a rural area, how this affect your decision making, arrest somebody because of proximity of these people? You're living amongst these people.
Yes.
How that affected you in decision making, judgment? I'm going to arrest Mario, but then 2 days later he's going to come back. I'm going to see him in the pub. How that work for you? It's a different than a city. As I say, you arrest today somebody, but maybe you never see that person again in your entire life. But in areas as you did work.
One of the good things is that you may have to go and arrest someone, and that person may have a reputation for being violent or not particularly liking police. The beauty of being rural, though, is you have the time. So in Melbourne, you may have to go to arrest someone, but you've also got 5 other jobs you have to go to when you finish this one. So you're hurrying. In the country, it is more than likely just that one job that you'll be going to at a time. So you have time to be able to sit back
there's no
and
backlog.
talk to people. There's no backlog. That means that if you get someone in and the way you're talking to everybody hates being ordered to do things. You're under arrest, turn around, put your hands behind your back. What? Why? It's or get stuffed.
Yeah.
And that can just lead to escalation that you don't need to. I can remember going to criminals who were quite violent and saying, listen, we've had this report done. We have to interview you on it. Now, don't worry, you're not going to get locked up. We're just going to interview you. You'll be bailed and you can go home again. But we have to do it because it's our job.
Yeah.
Would you like to follow me down to the police station? I can think of a number of times where I've done that. And the person doesn't feel like he's being ordered to do anything. He just... but the end result is exactly the same.
So it's more humane way, more...
So it's with... You're able to talk to people. You're also able to know the people. You know their family history. For example, I can remember doing training once where they said we're going to do cordon and control. Okay, you have a person in here with a knife. Neighbours have phoned up, they're worried about him. You have 4 vehicles. Where are you going to put them? And my question was, where did I get the 4 cars from?
Okay.
Because I'm going to wait 6 hours before 4 cars can get in?
Yeah.
And so they will then say, well, what would you do? And I go, well, who is it? I probably know them.
Yeah.
I'll be able to get their phone number. I'll phone up and go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Friggin' mate, you got everyone worried. How's about you just put the knife down, come in and have a cup of tea? It's completely different. Fair enough, there are scenes where you come in there and it is violent, and you have to act immediately. But the big difference with the country is you have time to be able to talk to people. A lot of the times I've been able to phone people up and get them to come into the police station to be interviewed. You don't have to go around there, handcuff them and put them in the back of the car.
To be a cop, you need to carry the firearm. And I know that most of people dreaming about having the weapons, you know what I mean, and being the police officers. I think the movies in Hollywood actually depicting this job, being police officer, you have the gun, you can shoot everybody and anybody, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, on your chapter 27, guys, and as I say in the book, backup is 3 hours away, you need to attend something called Operational Safety Tactics Training. A cycle come up. And it consists from 2 days, and second day it's a range shooting.
Yes.
Okay. I told everybody I'm going to interview the man who's been shot in the face and got a bullet between the eyes. And everybody's looking at me like this. And even I spoke to friends overseas from the military. And I said, Mari, are you bullshitting to me? Because, what do you mean? I mean, like, he's alive? I say, yes. It's like bullet in the head. And they're curious to hear this interview in Croatia. So I know I can laugh now because you are opposite me and you are alive. But I want you to explain everybody how did you got bullet in your head?
So it's not an amazing story about a criminal and a gunfight and a chase. It was a range accident, and back in the year when this was happening, when we were doing firearms practice, we used to go to the local pistol range, and back then, unfortunately, there were a lot of metal surfaces, and a lot of our shooting was done at very close distance. Sometimes we're only a metre away from a target. So you would have a target, but that target would be in a metal frame. So on this occasion, we were only about 4.5 metres from the targets. We were in a line. I was on the far left, and on the far right there was a sergeant from a neighbouring police station, and I had finished firing. You get a course of fire. It was 4 rounds on target. We had brand new targets, so there were no holes in them already, and we were when you heard the beeper, you were to draw, fire 4 shots, and then wait in the ready position. So I did that, and I dropped my revolver at the time, the Mark 10 38s, down at a 45-degree angle. And what happened was the sergeant fired his last round. It missed the target completely, impacted a 1-inch steel plate, ricocheted clean back. So the round drove in here, it drove up the ridge line of my nose, it impacted the cartilage between my eyes and stopped. I felt like I'd been hit in the head with a baseball bat. I remember I reeled back, everything went black. I went down on one knee and I almost went unconscious. It was really, really close. Everything was black, I couldn't see. And then I got these kind of sparkles in front of my eyes, and then I came back again into consciousness, and I got up, but I was very unsteady on my feet. The range controller came over and said, "What's wrong with you?" And then he looks down, and then I just looked down at my shirt in front of me, and I just had blood streaming out of my nose, coating the front of my shirt, and the range controller went white. And he said, "Range closed, come with me." So he took me back and sat down.
There was no chaos. There was no.
No.
Okay,
no. Everyone's just going. Everyone had finished firing. Everyone's going, "What's on?" And so they went back, and the range controller. I wound up putting a pad to try and stop the bleeding, and they didn't know exactly what had happened. They felt there was the range next door, and they felt it may have been a round from them firing. It's gone sideways and it's just nicked me. They just didn't know. So the range controller said, "No, jump in the car. I'll take you to the hospital now." And then he said to the one of the detectives who was also on the firing line with us, "Find out what happened." So how the detective was able to determine what had happened was that he knew what the course of fire was, and we had brand new targets up. So I gave him my firearm. He opened it up, 6 rounds, 4 of them expended, goes down to my target, 4 holes in the target. Goes to the next guy, goes to the next guy, goes to the next guy, and at the far end, opens the pistol, 6 rounds, 4 rounds expended, 3 rounds on target. And then he looked, and then he saw this shiny metal round piece in one of the metal sidearms that had obviously been struck, and that had come back. So I got to hospital, and it was lunchtime at the time, and I got put on the CT scanner to find out exactly what had happened. I remember I'm lying face down on the CT scanner with a bucket under me, collecting the blood that was still coming out of me, and
it's like a butcher shop in America.
And one of the guys was sitting there, and I got up, and I could not feel a thing. I felt like just numb. And he said,
"Could you feel your limbs, your arms or legs?"
Yeah, everything. He came out and he said, "Come in and have a look at this." And I look in, and here's the CT scan with the round basically between my eyes.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the guys eating his sandwich looked up and said, "That's awesome. Can you feel anything?" And I went,
Can I read just something? Because see, this is what I like about you. I mean, this is life-threatening injury. Yet you say like, I look at his shirt and see a couple of crumbs from the sandwich. Is that a doctor?
"Oh no, yeah, sorry."
I think, let me quote this, quote Mark. "You know, I don't have a problem with that." That's a Mark says to the guy in his head, because of what antibiotics are for. So he says, "All right, I'm going to have knock you out and paralyze you. You'll be out for 3 hours. Any questions? I say yes. Can I make it phone call? Where does this humor come from? Like, I was seriously, like, I was reading, I said to myself, is this guy for real? Like, you know, like, because most of people will panic, beg for help, beg for mercy, whatever it is. You still are composed and made it sarcastic remarks on the situation.
I went back and spoke to the range controller, and he said, what happened? And I go, there's a bullet in there. And the range controller goes, the whole thing? And I went, yeah. And he goes, and so the poor range controller then has to get on the phone and say that the member's been shot in the head, and they're operating to remove the bullet. And general surgeon at the time walks in and just has a look at the x-ray, says, tilt your head back, shines torch up my nose, and he goes, we'll do it now. So on a trolley,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
running along,
Just like
and then the anaesthetist comes up, and the anaesthetist was still having his lunch, and he's eating a sandwich. And he goes, g'day. And I go, g'day. He goes, I'm your anaesthetist. How much do you weigh? And I've gone,
so you're still conscious with the bullet?
100 kilo. Yeah, I'm still there. I was numb as anything. He goes, ever had a general before eating his sandwich? I go, yeah. And he goes, right, no worries, all right. Take your clothes off, jump on the scales, follow me. I walk into the operating theatre, and it's not set up yet. So the girls are still bringing out the trolleys and draping them with the stuff. He goes, jump up on the operating table. So I on the operating table, he cannulates me, and he goes, okay, gonna have to knock you out, gonna have to intubate, really sorry, but it's your face we're working on. Any questions? I went, sure, can I make a phone call? He hands me his own mobile phone, and I'm on the operating table when I call my wife and
How
tell her
far
what's
away was
happening.
your wife?
I
know in the
moved.
book, but I know in...
So I was stationed in Malakuta, but the accident happened in Bairnsdale. I was 2.5 hours the other side of Melbourne, where my wife was packing up our house in Apollo Bay. Now, I must admit that me phoning her really alleviated her worry, even though I didn't exactly say how serious it was. I said, I'm in the hospital, they've got to do a bit of an operation, I got hit with it, but it's not too bad, and she went fine. The police force offered to fly her from Apollo Bay to Bairnsdale in the police helicopter to be with me, but she was 6 months pregnant with our first at the time and got car sick, let alone air sick. So she declined to do that. The hardest thing for her was when two of the guys who I had worked with for 5 years got the message to come and tell her, and they didn't know that she had been told. So they arrive at the door thinking, how am I going to tell Kate that Trigger's getting operated on to get a bullet taken out between his eyes? And she was able to, she said, no, I've already spoken to Trig, everything's fine. And apparently the look of relief on their faces was just incredible. So the surgeons the next day said they could not believe how lucky I was.
And you are.
They said if the round had hit an inch in any other direction, I wouldn't be here. And they said there's no reason for you to be in the hospital. We've taken it out. You just need to recover. So the member who I was working with at the time in the Malakuta van drove me to Apollo Bay to be with Kate, which I thought was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And of Stu, thanks for that, mate. It was very, very appreciative because I wasn't feeling the best in the car, but I kept getting headaches. A year later, they took an X-ray, found they missed a piece.
You had 2 surgeries, right?
Yeah, so they went back in, and then 10 years later, I was having problems sleeping, and I wondered if it was post-traumatic stress. But my general practitioner said, I wonder if it's sleep apnea.
Okay.
from which is
That's
a
okay.
good call.
Yeah.
So they did a sleep study, and the result of that sleep study was, no, this is more reminiscent of a upper respiratory injury. Have you had one? And I said, yes. And so my third surgery was more serious, and it was, they had to go in and reconstruct my upper airways. They'd found out that because they were clogged and twisted, polyps had grown into all my sinus cavities. They had to clear all those out. They had to straighten my septum and, rebore areas. But as a result of that, I've been able to breathe much easier. Unfortunately, the cause of me not sleeping was post-trauma stress, not anything else. And I think at the time you downplay
Of course you do.
the injury. Oh, it's not that bad.
Because you're alive.
But yeah, you don't want to sit back and think, ooh, I almost died. You want to think, nah, it wasn't that bad. She's right.
PTSD or sleep apnea? Which one was?
Yes. So
So they fix your face, your nose, your breathing airways and everything else. But you think it's PTSD, right? It must
Yes.
be PTSD.
PTSD for military and police is a little bit different to
Really? Okay.
everyday average PTSD. Most people
Yes,
that
true.
suffer from PTSD have a single incident.
Yeah.
That may be a bank robbery where they were a teller and they had a gun pointed at them. It could be a road accident where several people have died, and that will give them post-traumatic stress. But military and police are resilient to PTSD. You wouldn't be in that line of work if you weren't. So instead what happens is it tends to be cumulative, and you can never ever tell how long it will take before the good acronym they use is the symbolism is you just have a cup, and as you see more and more traumatic incidences, the cup gets filled up. Eventually the cup will overflow. How big your cup is dependent upon a lot of things. It took me 31 years before that cup was full. I have lost count of the number of fatal accidents I've been to. I've lost count of the number of body parts that I've had to pick up off roadways. I've lost count of the number of people I'd had to go tell that their loved ones had died. I found myself that it was relatively easy for me to put that in the back of my head. But when a few incidents occurred where it was my life was really on the line, where I thought I was going to die, that had a huge effect. When you genuinely believe that you're not going to live for much longer, so many things happen to you. I remember time slowing. Everything was like in a dream where you're moving in slow motion. And it's just like your brain is going 1,000,000 miles an hour to try and work out how you're going to get out of this. But it seems like nothing you're doing is working towards that, and it's just I think a combination of both skill and determination, and it's in some ways luck that means you come out of it in one piece. Military, when you're at war, when you're in the front lines at war, they understand this pretty well. But most soldiers, the actual time they spend getting shot at is a fraction of their military life.
That's correct, yes.
But police officers will have...
It's possibly every day.
Can have incidences, once a week or even once a day. guys in specialist groups such as the major collision squad, every day they're going to fatal accidents, and that just builds up.
Can I ask you, sorry to interrupt today, because you mentioned something, no. I want everybody to understand that this interview with you is not just about your experience, because when we discussed how we're going to approach this interview, I wanted that everybody who's uniform understand that you represent them, and who better than yourself. When we talk about men on the front line, police, in general speaking, you say something what for you need to attend, I would say it's the most hardest call. Would you agree for me that the hardest call for every police officer is to tell some family that loved one, he lost a life and they need to go in hospital or something like this? Or is
Yes.
It is?
Yes, when they're dead. I have had some absolutely horror jobs.
What you can say, of course. You know,
Oh, look, no, that's not a problem. An incident occurred where I was working again by myself, and I walked into the pub just to see who was in there, and in it were a couple of young guys that I knew, they were local, and they'd been drinking a bit and may or may not have had something else other than drinks. But I remember having a chat to them and saying, you guys take the bus home tonight. Okay, I don't want to see you driving round, or I'll, I'm going to have to pull you over, because I figured they probably were over the limit to drive. And as I drove away, they've watched me, and then they've run out, jumped in their car and driven the other way. And within 15 minutes, they'd had a head-on with a tree. I attended the accident. The driver was dead, and the passenger was very, very badly injured. He was still breathing, but he was not conscious, and both pupils were fixed and dilated. So that any paramedic listening will automatically know that is not good. It is an extremely serious, time critical and life threatening situation to be in. Emergency services had come because there was fuel on the road, so the fire brigade were there, the CFA, the SES were there to help with it. And what happened was, then someone had obviously told the pub bus rolled up with relatives of the driver who had died, and they started punching on with emergency services. And I had to go and grab this one guy by the scruff of the neck and say, you are not helping. And he's distraught, he's screaming, he's yelling, it's my cousin, it's my cousin. And I'm going, you are not helping, go away. So it took a while for another police officer to come and get me, to assist me. And then he had to leave, because back then we were flying in the air ambulance, but there was nowhere for him to land. You had to go and light the airfield with torches in order to let it go. So he went off, and then another half hour to get someone else. So he was able to stay there. I then had to go and tell the parents of the two young guys what had happened. The driver, his father had died, his mother had terminal cancer. She only had 2 weeks to live. And I had to go and tell her that her only son had just been killed. Now, I knew that before I went there. So I also knew that once I told her that there's no way known that I could leave her by herself. So I got her niece, who I knew. And I woke her up. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. Bashed on the door and said, "Listen, you've got to come with me." And then I explained it, and then it was hard for her, but she was able to do that. I then had to go tell the parents of the other guy who was badly injured. I pulled up at the address of the mother, and the reason why it was just the mother there was because she had broken up from her husband 4 years previous, where her 16-year-old son had died in almost identical circumstances on the same road 10 kilometres further up.
Mark.
So I now had to tell her that her second son, who was only a few weeks off his 21st birthday, was so badly injured he may not make it. So I saw this lady daily in my life, and she had no idea why I was there. So I'm trying to take her to the airport to get on the plane with her son, and she was screaming the whole way, wailing. I'm holding onto her with one arm and steering with the other. We got to the airport just in time to see the air ambulance take off, and they weren't coming back. So I had to know, what am I going to do with it? So my only option was to take her to the local ambulance station, because I still had to go and speak to the father. And the poor ambulance guy wasn't happy because he's got a heap of paperwork to do. And he goes, well, why are you leaving her here? I go, mate, can you just look after her and let her know, you know, like cheer up a bit, because I've got to tell the father. And he was okay for that. So then I roll up with the father. It was the father's fourth son that had died. He had a young son who was only 9 years old, had been hit by a car and killed crossing an intersection. He had a baby with a hole in the heart that didn't make it, his 16-year-old son, and now he's 21, 4 sons. He was almost 3/4 of the way through a bottle of whiskey and just staring into the distance. And I'm telling him this, he'd already been told. So when I got there, he started drinking. And I remember at the end of it, I said, is there anything, are there any questions you want to ask? Is there anything you need to know? And I remember him looking at me saying, no, that's okay. I'm sure if there's something, you'll come back. And then he added, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, he added, boys will be boys. And I remember that and just thought, that is just so sad.
Now I can see now, as you're talking, observing, you're very emotional. So my question is, what care you get as a police officer or any police officer after doing such a thing? You know what I mean? Like counselling and...
So with a fatal accident, a report is generated and you'll get a phone call from welfare.
Welfare?
Yes.
Okay.
So police welfare will phone you probably about a week later, and they will ask, how are you going with the fatal accident you went to? Do you need any help? Are you struggling? What would you like to do? It's interesting because sometimes we would do fatal accidents across the border, and I remember that back then there was nothing in place because the fatal accident report was not generated in Victoria, it was New South Wales. There was nothing to do that, so we actually got that changed.
Okay.
So that the sergeant's job is to then inform welfare so that you would get that phone call. And they have things in place that would be able to help you. But here's the thing, nobody really wants to say they're struggling. They don't want to say that they're having a hard time. They want to be the resilient, strong, tough guy to say do that. But I knew when I was suffering from PTSD, I started having nightmares. My nightmares were not of a job which I had gone to. They weren't the same night, where they were all different. But in all of them, someone's life was in danger, and I was putting my own life in danger trying to help. And sometimes it was my kids, sometimes it was complete strangers. But all the time I would wake up with my heart pounding. And I knew then that was something. And then I started getting some shaking with my left hand, and I thought, no, I've got to do something about this. So I wound up going to my doctor. He put me off onto work cover. Work cover was accepted, and back then there's a course you can do with Post Trauma Victoria, and it's 8 weeks full time. You basically, I lived in Melbourne and went to Post Trauma Victoria at the Austin Hospital, the Heidelberg Repat Hospital, and it was interesting because when you've got where you're suspected of PTSD and you go to a local psychologist, they're not a specialist. They're an overall psychologist. They may have done post-trauma, but it would only be a percentage of their degree about what it is. And I found that by the end of it, I probably knew more about post-trauma than they did from doing my own research. But when first of all, what I had to do was, this course was extremely expensive, and work cover don't want to send you if you don't have PTSD, so you get sent to the work cover bullshit detector. And it was a psychiatrist who was one of the most amazing. You ever seen that show, The Mentalist, where the guy... Yeah. He was exactly the same. I walk in, I sit down, and he goes, explains who he is and what he's going to do, and then he sits down to me and he goes, so, what's the fishing like in Malakuta? And I'm sitting there going, have we started? Or is that a trick question? Or is he just interested in fishing? And I go, well, I don't really know. And he goes, why don't you know? Well, because I haven't been fishing in a while. Why haven't you been fishing? Oh, I don't know, I just haven't been fishing. He goes, but you said here on your report as to what you enjoy doing, it's fishing. And every single question was completely left field. I had no idea where he was going with any of it. And at the end of it, he just held his hand up and he's writing, and he said, you've had some trembling in your hand.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, but I've been sitting there with my hands together. And I go, yes. He goes, not too bad though. And I went, that's right. And then he looked at me and he said, just your left hand. And I remember looking at him and saying, how can you possibly know that? And he said, oh, that's easy. I watched you fill out your forms. You're left-handed. That's the hand with the fine motor skills and the one that normally goes first.
Yeah.
And he said, don't worry about it. You've got PTSD. I'm recommending you do the course. And the course was fantastic. I arrived and it was as if, you know how you meet someone and they are an utter expert and you just sit back and go, oh. And they cured my nightmares. I stopped any trembling and I felt really good. Unfortunately, I went back to work and put myself straight back.
That's a trigger.
Straight back, and in 8 months I had 8 critical incidents.
Can I ask you my last question for this interview, because I'm aware of the time and I'm aware of other things. After you seeing so many things in your career, you've seen violence, you see courage, you see tragedy, death. What keeps you believing in people?
Having travelled as a teenager into my early 20s gave me an insight into where Australia sits in the world. I find a lot of young kids in Australia today have no idea about what it's like in underdeveloped countries.
True.
They worry the fact that they don't have an iPhone 12 or whatever the latest iPhone is, and I've spent time with families in Africa where I know that I've been offered the children's food for that night. And to refuse that food would be a worse insult than doing it. And I'm sitting there with the equivalent of about 3 years' wages and a money belt around my stomach. And that's incredibly humbling. The one thing travel taught me is that it doesn't matter what colour your skin is, what religion you are, if you're rich or poor, or what language you speak. Everyone in the world is exactly the same. All anybody wants is to just have a nice life, free from conflict, maybe get married, have some kids. That's it. That's all there is. And that made me very much a glass half full kind of person. It made me somebody who, when I see something, I'll try and see the good rather than the bad. When you get PTSD, you tend to get angry.
Yeah.
Anger and PTSD is intimately linked. And how that stopped for me was I wound up doing a trip with the Commando Association to East Timor.
Yeah.
East Timor and Commandos have got quite a big history.
Yeah.
And what happened was I met a young guy called Greenleaf who had fought for the East Timorese against the Indonesians. And he was tortured for 3 years. They hung him upside down by his ankles for 3 days. It pulled his joints out. He walked quite funny. He was stuck in a 2 metre by 2 metre room with 16 other people. There wasn't enough room to sit down or lie down. They had to lick water off the walls to survive. And I remember asking him, "Are you angry with what the Indonesians have done to you?" And he said, "No, I've forgiven." And that to me just blew my mind. I said, "How can you possibly forgive them for what has happened to you?" And he said, "No, you don't understand. I have not forgiven them. I have forgiven myself to let it go so I can have a life." And that was like a light bulb going off in my head. And I just went, I've been looking at this completely the wrong way.
Mark,
and at the end of it, I just went, wow. And ever since then, I've changed my attitude and I've forgiven myself for anything that's happened to me or anything like that, and just try and look on the good side of people.
Mark, I just want to say thank you for being my guest today. Thank you for finding time to be in this hotel and sharing your story with the public, because you're a true epitome, a true beacon of hope. I'm saying, like, I saw injuries in the war, people being broken apart and death and everything else, but I never met somebody like yourself who is positive that way. We shared some conversations before, and I say, unfortunately, most of my comrades and the brothers in arms, they go in different direction of the war. Drugs, alcohol, criminal, whatever they did, and most of them, they end their life in very painful circumstances.
Yeah.
But you are the beacon of hope. I just want to say thank you for that. Every person you help it, every person you hold a hand, and being in that bush, in that four-wheel drive, 6'7", 110 to 115 kilos. So guys, this is the book you want to read. Backup is 3 hours away. I'm going to put in link on a book in the comment section below. So feel free to embark and learn about PTSD, about resilience, about courage, about human tragedy. After all, Mark was somebody who was witnessing this 24/7. We see this only from time to time on TV, if you choose. Mark chose to help the people. Mark, thank you for being my guest today on Life the Battlefield, and truly thank you for representing every police officer who is going through this ordeal, and you try to help with your book as well.
Murray, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.